My name is Andy Nichol. I just wanted to mention that in the developer stakeholder meeting, one of the big points that was made that I didn't see up here, it may be on something that you guys have, but was that accomplishments towards meeting these affordable housing quotas needed to combine both the city of Ukiah and the county, because a lot of our affordable housing projects have been within the city limits, which are accessible to other people in the county. And it was felt by a lot of the developers that were there that this had to be looked at as a regional type accomplishment, and not trying to make the county just outside the city stand on its own without looking at what's been done in the city. And I do, you know, looking at this slideshow, it looked like no accomplishments have been made in building affordable housing projects. And I don't really think that's true. I think if you look at all that's been done, built in Ukiah or been planned in Ukiah or on the outskirts of Ukiah, you're going to see that more accomplishments have been made toward meeting the needs of affordable housing than are of market rate housing. There's been quite a few projects that have already been built, and there's a lot of them that are being worked on in the affordable housing arena, but they didn't show up on any of the slides I saw. It looked like no accomplishments have been made, and I think that that's not necessarily the case. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Nichol. Any other speakers from the public wishing to address this item? Okay, I'll close public comment and bring it back to the board for discussion and or action. Supervisor Pinches.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, it mentions in here on page 13, I believe it says additional options, that the board could choose to waive the building fees for housing units of 1,000 square foot or less. You know, that's something we discussed about a year ago, and I think it's, you have to, in order to get affordable housing, I think there's two things you have to do. You have to build a smaller unit, but you also have to put that unit on a piece of property where your land costs aren't so absorbently high. And if we would move forward with this waiving the fees for a buildings of 1,000 square foot or less, you know, on as a second unit on a piece of property, all zoning we have allows for 2 single-family residences per parcel on all the zoning we have. So, but that's just half of it, to give the builder, say for instance, if they want to make what they commonly call a grandfather or grandmother a unit or something, is a second unit. But the other option we have is it just takes a policy change. We have presently, and this was discussed at our Public Resource Committee the other day, talking about affordable housing. Our Environmental Health Division has a policy. It's not a law. It's not a board policy. This is just a in-house environmental health policy that doesn't allow the existing septic system to have the second unit hooked up to it. There's no reason that it's just to me it's a crazy policy that shouldn't be in place. If you had say for instance a 3-bedroom home on that's raised, say a man and his wife and 3 or 4 kids, and all of a sudden those kids are off on their own to in another state, and you want to put a 1,000-foot unit in the backyard, or maybe even put a space for a mobile home park, which is very affordable. Not a mobile home park, but a mobile home, and let that unit tie into the existing septic system. There's no reason, because the usage would be down. You know, if they want to make a requirement on the usage, that's fine. But there's a lot of units or a lot of houses out there that have that availability. If you look at the maps of Mendocino County, there are a lot of lots that accommodate areas for a second unit on it. And your zoning allows for the second unit, but when you have a policy in environmental health that says you can't tie into the existing septic, then that means you have to put in a whole nother leach field and septic system. And 90% of this county or more is on septic tanks. So it's just, I'm not saying that all lots will qualify that, or that all landowners would want to put a second unit on their piece of property. But if we waive the building fees, that's an incentive. And if we get them beyond the cost of putting in a whole nother septic system, that's a further financial incentive. You know, you're down the road a long ways in order to build these units. And I think that is the best thing you know, outside of a new ordinance or law or anything. I think that's the most realistic thing we can do to meet the needs of affordable housing. Monday we discussed at the Public Resources Committee the problem with increased rates in the mobile home parks, people with their mobile homes. Well, we haven't built a mobile home park in 35 years in this county. So the only option that a mobile home owner has if they get their rent raised in a mobile home park is basically move to another county or state, I guess, because there's no place to move that mobile home. But if we would allow this exemption or this change of policy in environmental health for them to tie on to an existing septic system, if it meets, you know, the flow requirements and the discharge requirements that existing septic will handle, we could fill that need for people to have an option to put their mobile home in different areas. And like I say, with all the parcels we have in Mendocino County, I think that's the quickest, most immediate, and most effective way that we can really do something about affordable housing.
Thanks, Supervisor. Other supervisor comments?
I'd like to hear the board's comments on that proposal. It just takes a policy change. It don't even, it's not no law change or anything. It's just, we have to tell our Environmental Health Division that the board has all of a sudden decided to impose its own policy and not be reactive to a policy that's been concocted in our Environmental Health Division over the years.
Supervisor Delmore?
Well, on that issue, Mr. Chairman, it strikes me as kind of odd that we have to create a policy to override staff's policy, or to exempt staff's policy. We have a problem with staff policies, and it's a big problem that needs to be addressed, and we've talked about it a lot, but it really has to be addressed in a serious manner, because staff is developing regulations and making land use decisions based on even draft policies that they haven't even approved themselves, and to me that's ludicrous. And in terms of the 1,000 square foot second unit waiving the fees, I think that may be a good approach, and allowing them, assuming that the physical structure will allow it, hook up to the septic, to me doesn't, that makes sense. Why staff has a blanket policy is another big question. But so the short answer, Supervisor Pinches, I think that would be one issue that we could, I would be supportive of.
Cool. If I may, Mr. Chairman.
You may.
The reason I bring this up is because I brought this up about 1995, and it led to nowhere. And now here it is, that's been about 13 years ago. And to wait for our Environmental Health Division to change the policy, it hasn't happened. And I'm not willing to wait anymore. I think this board needs to take the leadership role and basically direct our Environmental Health Division that we have a policy that's different than their in-house policy. And that's it. It's a simple change, but it's probably the best thing that we can do to help meet our real affordable housing problem in this county, because it addresses two issues. It gets away from the high land cost of building a second unit, and there's some real incentives there. One is the building fee, waive the building fees of 1,000 square foot or less, and the other real incentive is the person wanting to put in a unit doesn't have to put in a probably $30,000 to $50,000 second septic system, which in lots of parcels don't have the area or won't meet the requirements. So there's a huge incentive for, and a lot of it will be these smaller units, whether it's allowing a mobile home spot for their grandmother to put their mobile home there, or to build a small unit. There's some real incentives there to do that.